G'day folks, you're listening to the podcast It's the Whiskey Talking with Harrie and Craig. In this podcast we take a light-hearted look at our current favourite whiskey, things that have got us thinking lately, other things that just pop into our heads while we're talking, and matters that have slowly taken on more significance as we ease our way into the last third of our lives. So kick back, pour yourself a pleasing beverage, and join us on our search for wisdom, thinly disguised as mates having a bit of a banter. G'day, Harrie.
G'day, Craig. How are you?
Good, mate. How are you?
Very, very well. Very, very good, thank you. And it's a bit later this afternoon, so I'm definitely looking forward to a whiskey after a long day at work.
Me too. What have you got for us this week?
Well, today I've got one that it's a beautiful whiskey that I stumbled across. Somebody gave it to me. I'm not sure who it is, so I can't give thanks and praise. When I do find out, I will give me a big sloppy kiss.
Hopefully it's one of our listeners and they'll remind us.
Yeah, well, I think I've got an idea who it may be, and I'll check with that person at some stage after this. But it's a Glenmorangie 18-year-old extremely rare single malt. And yeah, it's well, you and I, it's our first tasting of it because we were fortunate to be away over the New Year's Eve break, and we had a bit of a taste then. So there's a little bit left for today. And look, I found it very, very enjoyable.
I enjoyed it so much that I was very keen to have this episode recorded as soon as possible, so
That's right.
it wasn't disappearing.
Good plan, because there's not a lot left, and there probably won't be after today. But it is very nice. So I've, as you do in the past, I've taken some notes off the internet because I don't profess to be a total whiskey snob. I know what I like, but to actually frame it in words that people understand may not be my gift. Anyway, the tasting notes. The aroma is rich, rounded and sweet, featuring complex floral notes of acacia flowers and jasmine. Intertwined with a sense of dried apricot, citrus, vanilla and toasted almonds. Getting any of that?
Yeah, toasted almonds.
Toasted almonds. I don't get much of the jasmine, but it does have a definite different taste, but it's a beautiful taste. The palate is silky and full-bodied, delivering a harmonious mix of honey, malt and flowery notes, thus the acacia from before. Richer flavours of figs, dates, orange, marmalade and butterscotch. Sorry, that should be butterscotch pudding, emerging, balanced by subtle oak and a hint of wood smoke in the background. Not a lot of smoke?
Not a lot of smoke, no.
Finish is long and enticing, with a lingering sweetness of dried fruits, subtle dryness of, and I had to look this up, subtle dryness of Oloroso nuttiness, along with the hints of citrus peel and toffee. Now, do you know what Oloroso is?
I've heard that. I think it's a liqueur in itself.
Yeah, it is. It's a type of sherry. Good pick. Well done. I think it's a Spanish style sherry. So this is because this is, I think, aged. I think the final aging is probably done in these sherry casks.
Oh, yeah.
Now, expert opinions. So now I refer to the expert opinions, which isn't you or I. And it says balance according to Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible 2024. Do we have to now give some sort of reference? No, that's it. Regarding the balance of flavours, this expression has to be the Lord of all Glenmorangies.
Oh, the Lord.
So that's very good. So, and I did hear from somebody during the week that that's not how you pronounce Glenmorangie. He says that Scots call it, say, Glenmorangie, as in orange. But then checking on the weekend with
David,
a mutual Scottish friend of ours, he said, nah, it's rubbish. So we've gone back to Glenmorangie. And then basically texture. Reviews often praise its smooth, creamy and velvety texture, a result of the maturation process. That is one thing I did notice. It is, especially when we compared it to some of those ones we've had in the earlier episodes, it has a really nice, smooth, velvety texture. Then down to the end of it, versatility, which I think in itself is a stupid word. I don't know if people would use versatility when it comes to a whiskey. Maybe I could understand it for a drill bit or some sort of machinery piece. Versatility is described as a very easy, approachable and consensual malt whiskey, which appeals to almost any whiskey drinker, us, and while offering depth for connoisseurs. Maybe not us, but... These reviews and tasting notes describe the rich, honeyed and floral characteristics of Glenmorangie 18-year-old extremely rare. So that's it. So it's a look at it. If you hadn't tasted it before, you'd say, well, that's a pretty big plug, big pitch. And but I agree with every word.
Yes, all I can say is very enjoyable to drink.
And thanks again, who was the person that provided.
Thanks for sharing. So, we've been talking about whiskey, and a quick fact check from something we were talking about in the last episode. What does it take for something to be called a whiskey in Australia?
Yes.
Well, it turns out that it needs to be a spirit that has been matured in a wooden barrel for a minimum of 2 years.
Well, that's far less than I thought originally. I thought it was at least 5 to 8, but...
And even in Scotland, it's only 3 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there you go. The other thing that caught my eye in the time between us talking last time and today is a news report coming out of the US that the famous bourbon maker Jim Beam, the biggest maker of bourbon in the US, has announced a 1-year pause in production. So apparently after 2 decades of rapid growth, sales have dropped by 5% over the last year. And similarly at the maker of Jack Daniels, they're also laying off 12% of their workforce because of they're facing declining demand for their product. And they're not the only two companies in jeopardy. Several other US whiskey companies have gone into receivership. So the question is, well, what's happening? Have people stopped drinking whiskey over in the US or around the world? I've seen other reports that some age groups are certainly drinking less. So Gen Zs apparently are far less likely to drink alcohol than baby boomers or us Gen Xs. And I've even seen some reports of Australian wineries ripping up their red wine vines because just people aren't drinking the heavy reds anymore, the Shirazes and some of the Cab Savs, which is a bit of a concern. But anyway, the report that I was reading said that rather than it necessarily being a change in drinking habits, it might just reflect a bit of a correction. They found that there was a large increase in demand for their products during COVID. So people staying at home and drinking more, I suppose. So as a result, these companies increased their production, but now there's not as much demand, so they're cutting back a bit. But curiously, one other thing that they pointed to was that younger drinkers are not so much interested in their in the sort of low proof Jim Beams and Jack Daniels. They're much more interested in trading up. They're choosing the higher proof whiskies, the more expensive bottles that they can drink more sparingly. So,
like us.
Yes. So yeah, we don't tend to have whiskies as our main go-to drink, but we have it on special occasions and special times. I
think probably because, well, you and I don't mix it with anything, so you couldn't consider it as a beverage as such. It's not something you have. Oh, I need a drink. Well, I would like a drink. I'm going to have a beer or a Guinness. Guinness's sales apparently gone through the roof at the moment. So it's not that. So it's like a sometimes thing. So if you can have it as a sometimes thing, you want to buy or have, if people give it to you, something that's good.
Yep. No, that makes sense.
But I think you are right. I think I see far less younger people drinking, even the spirits mixed with stuff, I still see the guys that I know who love their bourbon and Coke. Now it's probably bourbon and Diet Coke probably now, but bourbon and Coke, and they've done that consistently, but I haven't seen anybody moving into that, that sort of class from the younger ones. And it may be because I've noticed, and again it's just probably part of my algorithm, I don't know, but I've noticed far more prevalence of whiskey clubs coming up in Instagram and those sort of things, so maybe that's an attempt for the industry as such to try and promote their goods, get it out to the younger market.
Yeah, okay. So anything been on your mind lately, Harrie?
No, back at work, obviously, after the Christmas and New Year break. And, the thing that's sort of, I guess, impacting me at the moment, besides the fact that I would like not to be there anymore, and I could become the next, look, I've retired interviewee in this podcast. That's not happening for a while. I had discussions with my wife, and that's not happening for the time being. So I'm embracing what I'm doing and trying to do less work less often. And so I am embracing AI because of that. And I'm not sure if I mentioned that before, but as an old bloke, I've realised that AI is here and I need to embrace it, otherwise it's going to run me over. And I am embracing it. I'm finding it's been wonderful and very, very useful. It allows me to do less work So that's great. And I find it's probably the benefits I'm finding with it is basically anything that's sort of a reconciliation type nature. I leave my tax always to the last minute because I'm self-employed. It's a year or so down the track before I have to do it, which means getting out my statements and printing things off and having a look, very, very manual. And most of my time was spent, I guess, ticking things off on one statement against another, etc., which lends itself perfectly to AI. If I drop those statements into AI, the bot does all of that work for me, and mate, I love it. So it would take me hours and hours and hours. It's taking me probably 3 or 4 minutes. So yes, loving AI, embracing AI.
Well, that's amazing. So you're quite confident about the accuracy of the product?
No. And that's it. I mean, I've just found, thank you, I'm glad you asked. I mean, I am, if you give it questions you know the answers to, basically, and all you're really trying to do is expedite that answer. If you're expecting it to come up with an answer that you're not sure about, that makes it hard because you want to fact check it then. I have just had one just recently where doing a bit of work for my father-in-law since my mother-in-law passed away, and he's not very good at paying accounts. So he's got this, I guess, Meals on Wheels account that he gets every couple of weeks. And they keep saying that he's behind by X number of dollars, and I keep arguing the point. And they got to send me an activity statement, and I got to go through all his statements and check it all. Which again, as I said, with AI, I can make that happen very quickly and very easily. So I did that, and for some reason, I was having trouble when I looked at it. It looked fantastic. It said what I thought it was supposed to say, but I don't know. I didn't want to spend a lot of time checking this, but it seems the invoice numbers were different to the invoice numbers that I thought I had put in originally. So look, I don't know, but I've gone through and had to manually check it again today. So fantastic yesterday because I had done it for me. Then I had to spend a couple of hours today manually checking it to come up with a similar answer, but I was more comfortable with my answer. So yes, you are right. You've got to expect that it's not always going to be right, and it doesn't tell you when it's not right. It doesn't say, "Oh, I'm not sure." It will come up with an answer. And because it doesn't like being wrong, and if it is wrong, it won't tell you.
I guess part of what makes the job, what makes it seem like it's helping you get work done, is that it sometimes feels like a bit of a helpful friend. And even if it is a friend that you sometimes are not so confident with, at least it sort of helps you get started.
Totally.
It helps avoid procrastination a bit.
Exactly right. Gets you doing the job, and if you've got to spend a quarter of the time just checking those results rather than the whole time doing it and still checking your own results anyway, I think it's definitely, for me, it's definitely does the job. And I'm even finding with emails at the moment, whether it's a function of age or not caring too much, when I go to do emails and those kind of things, I spend a lot of time double guessing myself, and I'm not a fast typer, so as my typing speed's now increased, I guess the accuracy has gone through the window. And so I know that now all I do is I'll just either talk to my phone if I'm not in the office, or I'll type basically a total draft of what it is I want to say. It doesn't have to be chronological. It's a whole screen. It's just a brain dump or mind dump of what I'm thinking about, and say, put this into an email for me, and it does it. But one thing that I do not like, and this is not AI, this is a general gripe that I have, even the normal systems within your Google and those kind of things that suggest an email for you when you're doing something, it's very hard to get it to pick up your persona. With AI, it's learning, so it's learning my persona, because everyone has their own style when they're writing an email. My style has and never will be putting exclamation marks in the middle of a paragraph. Exclamation marks should be saved for something that's really exciting, and most of what I do is not that exciting. I mean, congratulations, your home loan's approved. Yeah, maybe I could, but I wouldn't. It's not, and yet they all feel like they've got to shove at least a couple of exclamation marks in the body of the email somewhere. Sometimes even in the subject. I think you don't do that in the subject. So that's something I have an issue with.
Some refinement still to come.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, sort of getting back, there's nothing worse than facing a blank page and having to start work on something. So something like AI is very useful.
Exactly right.
And I can see, so from my perspective in my work area, which is university education, I can see why this has become so attractive for students. It helps even the most diligent of student get started. But unfortunately, a lot of my work at the moment is dealing with academic integrity cases where students have used AI and not declared it or not been allowed to, and basically getting a computer to do their work for them. And I mean, it's very difficult for us to detect that in the first place. We might have hunches, but it's very hard to point to something and say, well, you guys, you've cheated here.
Yeah.
As much as we might feel like it, the vibe isn't enough to sort of convict someone from that. And we have to rely on silly things like the AI has hallucinated some references and made them up, and so we can detect that pretty easily. But
sometimes the font will change and a couple of other things as well. So it is minor things, but are we at an age? I mean, with AI, obviously, it's getting to the stage where you're looking at a picture or a movie or a video of some kind, and you think, wow, that's amazing. And then you've got to stop and say, well, hang on, it's not real. And I spent down that rabbit hole. My current rabbit hole is those silly videos that came out prior to Christmas where people were stealing stuff from front doors and the cameras were getting it and all this stuff was happening to them. It's all AI. And you think, so where you're saying now you're not looking to, but you're having to, I guess, catch people cheating. I guess if you won't be around then, but I suppose down the track, that won't be cheating.
No.
So it'll be the norm and it'll be the ways and it'll be acceptable. So I guess the education industry as such will have to adapt accordingly because that will be the norm.
Yeah, and we are trying to do that. We realise that AI is going to be part of the work that our graduates do. So really, rather than stopping them from doing it or detecting when they are doing them and wrapping them over the knuckles, we should be finding ways that they can use it sensibly and actually educating them on the pitfalls of using it and how you use it to your best advantage.
Exactly, but not having them get it to do the work for them. I mean, they still have studies.
That might actually be useful, and then the humans can do other stuff that the AI can't do. So, we're still very much learning how best to use those tools. But I'm sure that in 5 years' time we won't even recognise what the workforce looks like compared to what it is now.
Well, I know that when I send an email to a client, if I've had AI help me with it, I'm still not comfortable enough. I'm comfortable from my side, but handing that information across to a client where you're saying your students obviously are hiding the fact, I'm up front and saying, hey, how's this? AI's helped me write this. It's weird, isn't it? And leave it because then I can cover my own ass for anything I might have said that's a bit weird. That's not you, Harrie. And I said, well, no, it wasn't actually me anyway.
Well, speaking about how work changes, we've got another interview this week. It's another friend or ex-colleague of yours, Harrie. And I think he talks a little bit about his work experiences, doesn't he, over time?
Yes, he does. And he's worked, the last 20 odd years he's been was working as a mortgage broker with me worked in the same office. He was down in Bustleton Way. And I was up in Perth, but we caught up quite regularly, became very good friends. And he retired, I think, in 2022, so a few years ago now. And he had some challenges since retiring, which he'll go through, obviously, with the interview.
Okay, let's give it a listen.
Good morning, Campo. How are you?
Harrie, good mate. How are you going? All right?
Very well, thank you. Very, very well. That's good. All right, so thanks for organising time to have a chat. I hope there's a bit of car noise out there. I hope we're not picking up the car noise. We'll see how we go. Hopefully I'll get Craig to sort it out. All right, so we've known each other for probably, over 20 years?
Yeah, 2002.
Yeah, so 24 years now, when you joined the same mortgage broking company that I was working with.
Yep.
And at that stage you didn't start broke. You lived and worked in Cal, didn't you? At Kalgoorlie at that time.
Yeah. But so I'd been in Cal 11 years.
Yep.
And I'd sold a mini mart in 2000, and it settled in 2002, beginning of. Mm-hmm. And I'd been approached by a mutual mate of ours, Ian Dunstan, about whether or not I wanted to be a broker.
G'day, Scooter.
Yeah. And I didn't really understand what was involved, but I had used Scooter as a broker, and I was completely enamoured with the whole process and the empowerment as the borrower. That really, really impressed me because I was an ex-bank manager, so I knew the process. John Bignell came up from Perth and across from Perth to say hello to me and Steph.
Yes, as you did back then. That's what you did with Tracy and I.
You want to be a broker, this is what's involved. So I thought that was very nice of him. So when I sold the business, we moved to Busso, which we'd always wanted to do.
And so before that, before being a broker in Kalgoorlie, you said you had that business, which was the mini mart.
Yeah.
And then from there, so what other jobs? So what were you doing prior to that?
I joined the Commonwealth Bank in 1978, January 78, in Esperance. I'm an Esperance boy, and then had a couple of transfers and moves, and I'd ended up in Kalgoorlie, Boulder in 1991. And then by 1995, I'd had enough of the Commonwealth Bank and I just had to get out. I bought a lunch bar, my wife and I, and 3 daughters we had. They were at school. So that was our first business. We had that for 3.5 years, and that sort of proved that we could live outside the womb of the bank. Cut the umbilical.
It's often a hard break to break from the bank. People, especially in the bank for a while, it seems, and there are many, as you've probably seen in your career as well, many that try the break, think it's going to be grass is greener on the other side for them, and sometimes it's not, and they end up going back to the bank.
Yeah, I agree. And I had guys my age saying, wow, what are you doing? But the strange thing was, I knew I was doing the right thing when I broke the news to the state manager, and I was expecting him to sort of have a go at me because I'd recently become a manager and I was a young manager. And he said, Campo, I wish I'd done that when I was your age. Yeah. And I thought, wow.
So there's somewhat some validation there.
Yeah. And he was the head of the state. You don't have such a position anymore. No. It's all, centralised nationally. But so that was the affirmation I needed. I was doing the right thing. And of course, the business was great. We loved it, worked very hard and did very well. And then when I sold it, I went into real estate for a couple of years, and Steph worked for the community centre in Kalgoorlie. And then I bought a freehold of a deli mini mart and thinking I'd be the landlord. But after 6 weeks of owning it, I had to take it over because the tenant threw her arms up and said, no, not doing this anymore. So I took it on.
So you bought the building basically thinking you just get someone else?
I bought, it was walk in, walk out. I knew the people who owned it, and it was my local deli mini-mart type thing, and they were terrible sort of operators. They used to smoke in the shop, and, you'd never buy anything in there unless it was well and truly sealed. So they sold a lot of cigarettes, newspapers and milk, and there's zero margin in any of that. So they sold me the freehold and said I could have the business. So it ended up that I had to leave real estate and take over the business, and I built it up over a couple of years and sold the business side of it. And that was the seminal moment, whether I invested another 5 years in Kalgoorlie or after 11 years, it was time to finally make the move to Busso.
So then fast forward, so you're broking for what must be 24, 25 years?
20 years, 2002 to 2022.
Okay, so then you decided it was time to retire.
I had built the business up from scratch. I didn't have a client base. I didn't know anyone in town.
That's right.
I started from zero, and no one really had attempted that. Yeah, I mean, it was a gutsy move. It was probably a
whole new town, so you had no relationships or friends or anyone you could actually rely on to get your first deal.
Correct. So I had a lot of faith in the business, though. I just thought broking's just this amazing industry that
is untapped at this stage.
Yeah, gives
So
gives
when
borrowers the
when you were
opportunity.
making the decision, and obviously John came to speak to you and Steph,
Yeah.
I guess, what was Steph's view on you taking on, as far as you were concerned, an unknown, untested?
I always had to work to convince Steph that I could manage it. And when I'd convinced her, got her to the tipping point, she'd back me 100%. So I'm very lucky in that regard. So my dream was to have a business that we could both work in together until retirement, so that we had something in common other than the children, who would grow and leave home, and instead of having a gap between the two of us, we had something in common. So it was a long-term, goal in that sense.
So then after your 20 years, you decided you'd had enough? Was that it?
The Banking Royal Commission.
Yes.
The Royal Commissioner was a complete
tosser.
Idiot. He had no idea what he was about any of the industries.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah. So it went from being a Banking Royal Commission, all of a sudden he decided to throw the broking industry under the bus.
Well, I think that was brought on by the current CEO or the current boss of Commonwealth Bank.
Yeah. Would sell his grandmother if he could get any decent dollars for her. But he no morals. But he's like a lot of banking CEOs, a lot of CEOs in general. To be honest, they heads of companies, and their sole focus is to make a profit and forget about people.
Well, that's how they get the role.
People are commodities.
Yeah, that's how they get the roles. I mean, obviously,
Correct.
They're successful doing that, and the money said, the numbers say that that's what they're good at.
Yeah.
So
when did that? Luckily, a lot of the accounting businesses, Deloitte's being one of them, said to the Royal Commission, wait a minute. Brokers are the only guys that are actually providing competition in the banking
and service
sector.
Yeah.
If you get rid of them, you're back to just four major banks providing the bulk of
the business
services. So anyway, despite himself, despite the efforts of the Royal Commission, the broking industry survived beautifully
and thrived.
When I started in 2002, I think it was 13% of home loans were written through the third-party channel, which is the broking channel. When I left, it was over 60%.
Now it's close to 70.
No business that is broken or bad grows like that. It has to be a proven model for it to work.
Well, so then you decided, obviously at the Royal Commission and everything else, and I think probably got to the stage it was time to
It was a bit of a fright for me, and I was getting a bit disenchanted anyway. And Harrie, you'll remember the ownership of the company that we were working for was changing, and it ended up
changed again.
Yeah, and it's now owned by basically News Corp, and anything Murdoch does, I always question. So it was time for me to get out. I was very cynical.
So you and Steph packed up the caravan and away you headed.
Sold the business in November 2022. I wasn't convinced I was ready to retire though, Harrie. I ended up getting
right. A forklift licence?
Forklift licence and a HR.
Mm-hmm.
I drove trucks for 6 months. I think it was more the high vis I was after.
Yeah, of course you were, man. You look good in high vis.
I did look good in high vis. And I realised once the crumb cheese sausages started to look good and the dare coffee, now's the time to get out.
And the dim sims.
Yeah.
Chicken.
The love handles were starting to appear, so I thought, better get out.
So you headed off.
Yeah, headed off in the caravan.
You headed off in the caravan. And
caught up with another couple in Broome, which were mates of ours, and we headed to Darwin.
And at some stage in the caravan trip, you started to get some pains.
Well, actually, the day before we left Busso, I'd put myself in an inversion machine, like
upside down, hang up like a bat.
You stretch your back, because I'd had this backache for a little while. And it felt great. I could feel everything clicking. And within about 15 minutes of that, suddenly my right leg went into spasm. And I mean, totally numb, but really, really painful. It was like every muscle in my leg was cramping and I couldn't control it. It was just going everywhere and it dropped me to the ground. And look, I think most men would have cried about then, Harrie, but I didn't cry.
Okay. Of course you did.
There was a bit of moisture in the eyes, you know, but that was only gritting your teeth.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, and so, of course, Steph grabs me and she's rubbing my back and suddenly it stopped. Oh, wherever you were rubbing, that was the spot. So I was under the impression, we both were, that I'd...
A nerve issue?
Yeah, lower back issue. My eldest daughter, who's GP in town, she came round and said, no, I think you need to have a scan on just to make sure everything's okay. And because I'm an ex-bank clerk, I knew better and decided I wouldn't have a scan because I really wanted to...
Don't listen to the doctor.
It's a lower back. So I just deal with it. So in the ensuing 10 weeks, as we went to Darwin and then down through the middle into South Australia and back home again, I probably had 7 episodes. And each time would mean I couldn't drive for some hours and Steph would take over. She's a ex-farming girl, so she could tow the caravan, which was awesome. And then when we got home, sort of beginning November last year, 2024, we decided, I just continued having tests. And as it ended up, I ended up doing... Well, my GP just threw his hands up in the air and said, I just don't know what the hell's going on. I'm going to refer you to the specialist in Bunbury. And he had one look at my stuff. And the day he got my stuff, he just told me, go and have a brain scan. And, I had a brain scan in Mandurah on the Monday morning, 2nd of December. And by lunchtime, we got home, had to drop something off to the local hospital. I got home and Amy, my eldest daughter, GP daughter, was home with Steph and they were bawling their eyes out. And I said, what the hell's going on here? And my phone hadn't connected to my car and my specialist tried to get a hold of me, but he couldn't, so he rang Amy because they know each other.
Yep.
And so I had to go straight to hospital in Bunbury and they said, well, you've got 4 brain tumours and you've got 2 tumours in your lungs and 2 in your liver and 1 in your adrenal gland.
Shit.
And I was thinking, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Yeah. Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah. And the strange thing was, within 24 hours, I totally and utterly accepted my mortality.
Yes.
And I was comfortable with the whole thing. And I put it down to the fact that my father had told me when I was 16, don't forget, son, life is a terminal disease. It's a condition we all share. Destiny we all share. Doesn't matter how rich, powerful or whatever, we all die. So you're going to lose friends, you're going to lose family, and one day it'll be your turn.
Yep.
When it happens, don't waste your energy on anger or surprise or fear. Just get on with it best you can.
Yep.
So,
great words.
Yeah, and I thought about that.
Yeah.
I don't know why he told me when I was 16. I think I'd done badly in an exam maybe, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, I thought about that conversation over the years many times, and when I lost a mate of mine probably about 4 years ago, and I sort of thought, I wonder actually what it'd be like if ever I get tapped on the shoulder. I wonder how I'd react. Anyway, so I had to say I reacted sort of...
Well, you did. But I mean, we've had discussions since then whereby you admitted that that's what you thought at the time and everything else. But as things, I guess, improved, and we'll talk about that a bit later on, that you realised that was probably a bit of bravado as well, because you still can't stop the underlying fear, I guess, even though you try to dress it up however you like to dress it up, it is still a terminal diagnosis, and you think, oh, shit. But, okay, so you decide, so you're back in Perth, you're having these tests and everything else, and you'd only just retired. So how did you feel about, about the change in your retirement plans after planning for a while and thinking about heading away and you're going to enjoy the...
Yeah, so I guess we'd been retired 2 years when this thing happened. And Christmas 24 was, I thought was going to be my last Christmas. And here we are, day after New Year's Day 2026. I thought that would be my last Christmas. But, like Harrie, I wasn't frightened. That was the strange thing. I was very much at peace. And when I got home, in between tests and treatments, they were putting steroids into me to try and keep the swelling in the brain down. And I probably didn't fully appreciate how empowering steroids are. They actually give you some stamina. So I was going for long walks along the beach, 5Ks, and I'd never felt so peaceful and restful. And so that was, that was a bit of an epiphany. But once I'd put that to bed, I realised that, okay, if I'm not scared or fearful or anything, why not just live as long as I can, which I wanted to do because I wanted to see my grandkids go to university and I wanted to embarrass them on their 21st birthdays,
Of course.
And so I just felt I was in probably a really, really good headspace to tackle something like this. My belief, and all these things are personal, so this is my journey. People have other reactions, people have other diagnoses. But I felt that I had disempowered the cancer by taking away some of the key tools that cancer uses, and that's your fear, your anxiety, and all that kind of negative stuff.
Your weakness,
I think it feeds on that. And when you talk to nurses, and they know stuff, and they all say the same thing, that your mental health is reflected in your immune system.
It's just as important as anything else. Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, so a year down the track, I've hit all the 9 tumours out of the park. I'm continuing to have tests. I've got a couple of things that they're going to check out over the next week or so. Melanoma has a habit of coming back, especially in the first 2 years, so they keep me on a treatment for 2 years, maintenance, and they'll keep testing, but they'll reduce the frequency as time progresses. So,
well, that probably, with Craig and I've discussed this before, that when you are planning your retirement, you want to live a long time and everything else, health sometimes is a little bit out of your control. So, you hadn't planned this, has happened, everything else, but to see yourself into your 80s, 90s, whatever it's going to be, you do, have some sort of control over your fitness and not so much your health. If you're going to get sick, you're going to get sick, and sometimes that happens, as you found out. But with your, so what are you doing now as far as your longevity? Besides obviously your treatments and everything else you have to do, but what are you doing? You said this morning you went for a swim.
Luckily for me, my 20 years in this business enabled me, and I worked very hard the whole time I was in it. So by the time I sold that, I was in a good financial position. I had more money in super, more assets and everything that I ever dreamt I would have. And I guess that was part also of me being able to feel at peace, because I felt that I'd achieved more than I ever thought I would when I was 19 when I first met Steph.
That if you were leaving Steph, she'd be okay.
Yeah, correct. So, and she'd be okay because the girls and Steph are very close as well. We are a close family, so I knew they would always look after her. And so all that was cool. So then you got 12 months where you're just trying to concentrate on getting better, and you sort of forget, that your partner's is having to adjust to the possibility of losing a partner. and going solo. And as I've said to a couple of my mates, it wouldn't be so bad for their wives because they're not married to, an Adonis like me. So particularly half a Steph.
That's right, exactly. They might love what they're missing.
Correct. Yeah. Right. So anyway, so I was just concentrating on getting better, but now we're sort of able to plan a few things. I'm still immunocompromised, so I've got to be a little bit mindful of that. I'm not going to... I had to cancel a trip to Italy, actually, for a friend's daughter's wedding in Tuscany over Christmas because...
it was a risk.
I had influenza A and I ended up in hospital for 3 days and it was like, well, what the hell? That's just a cold, isn't it? And it wasn't,
I thought the same. And I think even in our previous episode of the podcast, I mentioned my man flu or the influenza, and it knocked me around a little bit. So you went for a swim this morning.
Yep.
And you're doing that fairly regularly now?
Yeah. I'll probably do it 3 times a week. I swim about 1K.
And you ride your bike?
I ride my bike.
Yeah. So you're doing...
I've got to start going to the gym because I've got to get a bit of muscle tone back.
Yep.
But yeah, life's good.
So, go on.
Yeah, we're sort of planning another road trip maybe to South Australia. The people who do my treatment, there's a company called Chemo at Home.
Yes.
They're started up in WA, but they've expanded nationally and they cover South Australia quite well apparently. So, I can...
That's something you mentioned to me a little while ago. I think it's very, very interesting. So, as I said, Craig, this is for you. I don't know how to do this, but we might try and find some information on this Chemo at Home and put them in our notes or on our Instagram page so people can look them up and see. Because I think it's a great business and it's an opportunity so you don't have to be domiciled just at your house going into hospital every time to get your... I mean, because we've got other friends that every 3 weeks she has to have chemo as well.
Yeah.
And to know that you can be travelling, at least so far we know to South Australia, and maybe other states will catch on.
They haven't got. They said to me they haven't got into Tasmania yet, and they don't cover the north of Queensland very well. But I was more interested in South Australia anyway. So I don't know whether they're in the Northern Territory. Maybe they are in Darwin. I'm not too sure, but that's definitely something you could check with them.
So with your retirement, obviously. You and Steph now are spending 24/7 together, which when you were working before, I suppose when you're working in your previous businesses, you're probably working together and seeing each other all the time. So now you're seeing each other all the time.
Yeah.
Have you had to make adjustments? I mean, or is it something that's just naturally flowed? You're comfortable seeing each other?
No, nothing natural about it. when I first started, the first couple of years, you do have to make an effort because I didn't realise how much Steph cleans the house.
Yeah.
And
it makes you feel guilty when you're sitting, she's cleaning around you?
Constantly cleaning. And I sort of said to her, I've got to be honest with you, I didn't see my retirement as a cleaner.
No.
Why don't you just let it get messy a bit? But she had to sit me down and say, look, mate, I like a clean house, all right? This for me is therapy. So
exactly. It's not her problem, it's your problem.
No, that's right. So just get over it. So, okay.
And also at that stage, I think you did a run with the men's shed as well, because I've talked about that in previous episodes with other guys. So
I joined the men's shed before I got diagnosed. I joined the men's shed and that's great. I go there a couple of times a week and I play golf once a week on a Tuesday on the Vets Day. It's great. And since my diagnosis, it's very humbling because then you realise how bloody lucky you are to have the family that you have.
Yes.
And I've known Steph since I was 19 and we've grown up together basically. That's bloody awesome.
Well, she shows amazing tenacity and understanding and forgiveness.
Well,
knowing you for that long.
It's like winning lotto, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Well, no, for her, for you maybe.
Yeah. So it doesn't come, I'll be interesting to know if anyone finds it a natural progression when they retire.
And that's why I asked the question, because, we often talk about, I talked about in previous episodes, so has Craig, with how, the roles may change as well. Like you're saying, you could have very easily, if Steph wasn't so, I guess, enthused about cleaning, you could have taken up the cleaning role. And she might have done something else. She might be out playing golf. So sometimes the roles actually change, or they move together or whatever else. But I think you do have to have, obviously, your own time.
She has her mates that she catches up with, and we've got 3 of our 6 grandchildren in town. She's
hands-on
a
grandma,
natural mum and a natural grandmother.
Yep.
I mean, I love my grandkids too, and my children, obviously, but Steph's just this.
Well, it's funny. I'm going to hark back to a previous episode that I said someone had said to me, when you have grandkids, you don't know till you know. Basically, there's a spot in your heart or soul that obviously is reserved for grandkids. And I remember now who that person was that said that. It was you. So there is. Yeah. It's a special time. A special time for Trace and I as well at the moment. And the funniest thing, and Tracy will hear this, is that she puts 99% of the work in and everything else, but it's always pop, pop, pop. Where's pop? Where's pop? Where's pop?
Yeah. And I'm still the funny guy.
Yeah, me too. Maybe to her, maybe to your grandkids, yes, you are.
Yeah.
Everyone else, maybe not.
Yeah. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Grandkids are everything.
That's right.
And I say, as much as you can't imagine loving something more than your own children,
yes,
when your babies have babies, the love for them just comes inside of that somehow.
Yeah, that's right. And that's probably what you said. I changed it a little bit over time, but that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. I didn't want to put my kids off.
The babies of your babies. Yeah. Unbelievable.
So we've probably covered as much as we're going to cover today, I think. But there's a question I want to ask you, is that if you could go back, notwithstanding obviously a diagnosis, etc., and you could actually look at your younger self and say, this, I didn't realise when retirement came that this was the case, positive or negative. Is there something that you've actually learnt from retirement that you couldn't have, I guess, known or foreseen other than being ill, that you could tell your younger self when planning for retirement?
No, because I've got to be honest with you, I never really thought I would retire. My assumption was that I'd be working in my 70s.
Yes.
And I'd be the crusty old bugger who pays the wages and people just have to put up with me. A bit like John Hughes, I'd imagine. I think John Hughes might be like that.
Funny you should say that, because and maybe we'll talk about this off air, but
So I think I have that. As much as I dislike the Royal Commissioner, I forget his name. Can you remember his name?
I don't care.
No, I don't either. But I have him to thank, I guess, for triggering my
decision to move,
motion to sell the business, because there was a moment there where I was looking at the industry not being there, and at that stage, 18 years of my working life
counted for naught.
Yeah, gone to nothing just because some ignorant.
Yeah, and there was always been the threat of that.
Yeah.
And the sad thing about that was that the people that were making those decisions were so out of touch with the real world, because
and self-interest.
Like you said, what industry goes from whatever it was, 13% to close to 70-75% nowadays, in a relatively short period of time, if it's not successful, and not successful for the clients.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was the Royal Commission was saying things like, how can it be possible that clients can get all this service and not pay for it?
Yeah.
And the banks are paying for it. How better to do it? What a better service. Hit the banks, get them to pay for it.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it was quite obvious when I started that the industry was, we were just subcontractors to the lenders, because the little lenders didn't have the staff capacity that the big banks had.
All the marketing budgets.
Yeah. And it was only because the little lenders were starting to get, toehold in the market that
because
the
of
big banks
brokers.
decided,
because of the
shit,
brokers. The brokers became the sales team.
Yeah.
And it was up to us to convince to discuss with clients the benefits of working with a bank that wasn't the majors. Yeah. And that's how it all worked. It worked really well for me. And
it's funny. It was usually the rate.
Yeah. And it's funny.
The lack of fees.
It's funny because was it ASIC or whatever it is, they've basically learned from our model as well, because now the banks have to pay for their own. They've got to pay as well now. They've got to pay for their compliance and everything else. They have to pay the dollars.
Good.
So...
Good. Like the rest of us.
Anyway, mate, that's probably it. Thank you very much for your time. It's been wonderful. And we'll be speaking again shortly. All the best, mate. Cheers.
No worries. All good.
Oh, well, that was very interesting. He's a funny guy, old Pete.
He's a very funny guy, and that's him being restrained. Normally, if I let him go unleashed, it probably would have continued on down a very, very funny episode, but probably not as much, material out of it as we got.
Some of you might have noticed that there was a couple of beeps. We're potentially concerned that there might have been some slanderous comments, so we've just beeped out the names of people concerned, just in case.
The comments remain, just the names.
Yes.
Most of you can guess who they are, but hey, we didn't say it, so it doesn't matter.
And sorry about the some of the traffic noise. There wasn't much we could do about that, but it was such a beautiful position that Harrie and Peter were talking in that they just had to go with it.
Unfortunately, we don't. Well, the traffic noise we could hear, and we thought, well, maybe we wouldn't hear it coming through the mics, but it did. I promise next time I'll learn how to use the noise reduction system on the thing, but I don't know how to do that.
So unfortunately, the thing that struck me fairly early on was that he had such a major health concern just about as he was heading off on a retirement trip. And that what they really brought home to me, particularly the way events unfolded for him, was men's attitude towards their health checks. Just not in time sometimes, and that can lead to unfortunate circumstances.
Well, I think with Pete, he was pretty well on top of it. I think he wasn't, aware. He's never ever had a melanoma lesion, cut off or seen or anything else on his skin. So there was no reason for him to believe that he had melanoma through his whole body until he had obviously those spasms in his legs that he mentioned. But yeah, I think he's not one to. I don't think he's not. I think he's not one of these ones to avoid going to getting his health checks. Partly probably because his daughter is a doctor and she wouldn't let him get away with it. But yeah, you are right, and I saw it happen with my father. That there is, from the previous generation more so than now, but the previous generation, men don't go to doctors, men don't cry, men don't do so many things that now we realise, well, maybe you should. And so, yeah, it's important. Keep your health checks up.
Yep. And I love that phrase that he gave was that life is a terminal disease that we all share.
That's right, exactly. Something his dad told him at age 16. And when I first heard of his diagnosis, when I spoke to him, that's the first thing he said to me. He said he was comfortable with the fact. He knew that life was a terminal disease, and something that his dad had told him when he was 16. So, yeah. The other thing that I thought was good was when he gave kudos to the nurses, which is good. When he said that he wanted to disempower the cancer, he didn't want to give the cancer any ability or opportunity to get into his head. I mean, it was in his head, basically, physically, but he had several cancers in his brain. But mentally, he didn't want that to. He could do what he could, or the doctors would do what they could do with regards to the chemo and the radio treatment and the immunotherapy treatment to try and get the lesions, but the psychological side of it, he wasn't going to let cancer take that from him. So he was being very, very strong and taking ownership of it which I think was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it was very brave. I mean, it's basically, and sort of very insightful to say that, it's by not being scared and not getting depressed,
yes,
that was really reducing one of, cancer's great tools.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he didn't want to, what did he say? He didn't want to waste his energy and time in being angry, because obviously then the cancer's going to win, and the cancer would love him to be angry and concentrate on being cross and mad at the world, which is going to allow the cancer then to, I guess, build and get worse.
Probably a fairly a good general message, really, for life. I mean, even if you're not facing something like cancer, wasting your time on anger and those sorts of negative emotions, it's just terrible, because they do have seriously bad consequences for the rest of your life.
And physiological consequences too. Yeah, you don't want to be doing, there's too much good life to be enjoyed, and I guess, as we move into this last third of your life, as you like to say, or I call it the dessert phase, or the dessert
the remaining good years.
Yeah, the dessert course. The remaining good years of the dessert course. You don't want to waste your time with anger.
No.
Well, also there was, he did mention that he's occupying his time also with some health stuff. So he's doing his swimming, and he plays a bit of golf, and he's cycling, and also his mental side. He attends the men's shed, I think, a couple of times a week as well, when he's not travelling around his caravan. Something else that I noticed was, we talk about retirement and planning towards retirement, etc. And when I asked him the question, he said, well, he wasn't even contemplating retirement. As far as he was concerned, he was going to keep working to his 70s. And the reason that changed wasn't because of him directly. It was the industry, and the industry still continues on, but it's in a different format. And he realised after the Royal Commission that, people out there were making decisions about his industry that knew nothing about the industry, and it could very quickly disappear up its own freckle outside his control. And I have seen that, obviously, I've seen that happen with other industries as well, where people that are charged with making decisions unrelated to the industry itself can sometimes kill an industry. So I think that's what gave me a bit of a shock, and he realised, well, he didn't want to do this anymore, which was a loss to mortgage broking, because he was a very, very good mortgage broker. And I guess the last thing that I've got to is the chemo at home thing. We'll attach the details to the show notes, or that we put on. If you try to find chemo at home on Instagram, I think the handle that you find is probably an Indian site. It's not an Australian site. So if you're interested, it's actually, their Instagram, I think, is View Health, one word, View Health _ chemo at home. And I think the web is chemoathome.com.au. They also say that with most health insurance companies, there is no gap. Not in all states of Australia, but most states of Australia, so it's worth knowing.
I had to laugh at his comment about when he was spending a lot more time at home than he was used to, that he was noticing his wife's cleaning habits, and that they were not of what he would have expected. And yet she said, well, this is therapy for her, back off.
Yeah, exactly. And no, he's always been very much that way. He and Steph have a wonderful relationship. They are both quite different, and they gel so well. I mean, you'd have to be a special person, I think, to put up with Pete's non-stop antics.
Still, I did like his comment about babies of your babies.
Yeah.
Perhaps we shouldn't talk too much about that, or we might start crying.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He was the one. Remember, I said ages ago there was someone that told me he was the one. And I do like a bit again. What did he say? He said, if other people go through the same, he said it's a personal journey. If other people go through the same sort of journey, they might not care so much, because my wife's married to an Adonis.
Yes, it did make me laugh.
He's a funny guy. I think we need to have it. Well, don't know how it goes with his therapy, but at some stage you need to catch up and have a whiskey with him. Yes. He does like a whiskey. We did like a whiskey. I hope he still does.
All right. Well, that's been a very interesting interview, and it's sort of covered a couple of things, not only just about previous career and how that went, but how it moved into retirement and, relating to health issues that happen when we get to certain parts of our age. Some of our next guests that we've got scheduled are probably going to be focusing more on the health side of ageing and what's not a good thing to do and what are better things to do. And, we won't be preaching, but these are just some suggestions about how we might, do things slightly differently to what we've done in the past.
To enjoy a longer retirement.
Yes.
Longer and healthier retirement. I mean, you don't want a long retirement if you're bedridden.
No, that's right. All right. Well, thanks so much for bringing that wonderful whiskey, Harrie. Let's sign off now and
another one
and finish it off.
See ya.
It's the Whiskey Talk. It's written and produced by Craig Spielman and Harrie Swanson. All music is written and performed by Craig Spielman. The audio was recorded at the Wardrobe, Perth, Western Australia. We value your feedback about the show, especially any information you can provide on issues we've discussed that we can share with our listeners. We'd also love to hear any whiskey recommendations. Our email address is whiskytalking@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We all benefit profoundly from more listening.